Hey, it's me, April Spectrum, and today we are going to talk a little bit about autism, mostly what it is and what it isn't. I'm sorry for the lighting, I'm actually nocturnal, and so it makes this a little bit difficult. So, anyways, for the absolute newbie, what autism is it is a developmental disability, which means that it is progressive, it changes over time. The best explanation I can really give is imagine you have a ball of yarn, and a normal ball of yarn, you pull the string and it's supposed to go all straight. An autism ball of yarn, sometimes there's tangles, and you might get big tangles, you might get little tangles, you don't really know what you're going to get until you see it. And until you start pulling that string, obviously it's going to look normal. Autism is not a mental illness. That classification is reserved for mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and psychotic disorders, and those are all a bunch of fancy terms for things that go wrong with the brain. The most commonly known mood disorder would be depression, and it is not just feeling sad all the time, it is a bit more complicated than that, but mood disorders like depression impact how a person perceives and feels emotion, generally for the worse. Anxiety disorders, they impact how the person feels fear, and usually that causes a person to have a fear response to a stimulus that is not normally scary, or just to have fear for too long of a time. And of course, psychotic disorders inhibit the person's ability to determine what is real from what is not real. Autism doesn't do those things, although it can have what's termed comorbidities, which is basically when it has those in addition to the autism symptoms. That's kind of the gist of it. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the vaccine myth. Everybody's heard, oh no, do vaccines cause autism? Yes, they do. No, they don't. Da, da, da. Okay, so spoiler alert, they don't. But there is a reason that people believe that they do. And it's important to look at that reason when discussing why they don't. So, most cases of autism are not super apparent when you have just a baby. Because what do babies do? They drink, they scream, they poop, they sleep. They don't do that much else. And an autistic baby versus an NT, neurotypical baby, are going to be the same for the most part. When that baby gets to about the toddler stage, where they're supposed to start like interacting with humans and deciding things they like their favorite color or whatever, that's when you start to see the sort of the tangles, because a normal baby, an NT baby, is going to start saying mama and dad, and they're going to start liking this sibling over that sibling, and they're going to decide that this is something they want, this, give me that, da da da, and they're interacting. A baby with autism won't necessarily do that, or at least won't do it in the same way. They might become more vocal, screaming and crying over everything, or they might just be silent like a little robot baby. And that time frame where that starts to be apparent just happens to correspond with the majority of early vaccines being given. So to the parents' view, you have a normal baby, you give it vaccines, and suddenly you've got this weird baby that isn't normal anymore. Correlation, not causation. Another thing about vaccines is they are weird, scary science that most people just don't understand. Like, what even is in there? You squirt this stuff into a kid, and they're supposed to not get sick, only sometimes they do, and sometimes they get a worse kind of sick, and then sometimes they don't get sick, and what the hell is going on? Vaccines basically have three main ingredients. Your disease, which is typically a weakened strain, or else sometimes an altogether killed strain that is just basically disease corpse for you to recognize. You have some minute amount of the growing agent, which is usually pasteurized egg whites, and then you have your preservatives like formalin or, yes, mercury. There is mercury in vaccines, some of them. These vaccines are strictly for adults, and the type of mercury is not like thermometer mercury or that stuff that's in fish that can kill you. It's an inert molecule that just doesn't do anything, except for keep it from growing other diseases while it's waiting to be injected into you, which is a good thing. You don't want that. Also, the amount of stuff in vaccines is really small and minute. For example, the amount of formalin in a vaccine is less than the amount that your body produces naturally during digestion. So it's not going to harm your kids to get vaccinated, typically. Now, there are some kids who have immune issues where a vaccine will not immunize them against something necessarily. It'll just cause them to get sick. And then there are other kids who will have an allergic reaction. So, like, if you're allergic to eggs, vaccines might not be a good idea for you, or you might need a special kind. But no, they won't give your kid autism. That's about it for now. If you have questions, I encourage you, please leave them in the comments. Also, you can just generally comment there. I will try to address comments in the next video. Otherwise, I'll talk a bit more about comorbidities and also about things you can do to help the people in your life who have autism.